Hey Mo,
Hey, Ricky.
we're doing a special episode of The Doctor Is In today.
I love it. I love it. And it's a
I
good time
know.
to do it. And it's a good day to do it. And it's a good reason to do it because we got some
Hey Mo,
trials and Hey, Ricky.
we're doing a special.
All right.
So it's acting. We're having a little
Ricky.
technical. We're checking, having a little episode
All right.
craziness here. So it's acting. We're having a little technical. We're checking, having a little episode craziness here. So hopefully this will work. Okay, let's try it again. I don't know why it's having funny stuff today, but um, we are having a little technical difficulty with the Black Doctor Facebook page, but we are going to make it work. But we have three amazing guests to talk about this awesome trial. You know, we're working with Novartis on this one, and it's called the Adjuvant Wider Trial. So why don't we do some introductions, and then we would love to have you know, Dr. Raymond can kind of talk about what we're doing here, and then talk about describe the trial for us, and then we'll talk about what's going on, how people could access it, who's it for, and all those good things. And then all the really cool stuff that Jamil and I are doing to support patients in the trial.
Love it.
So, hey, Doc, you want to go first and introduce
Yes.
yourself?
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a beautiful day. It's a Sunday. The fact that we're here on this Sunday tells you the passion we have for this clinical trial. But before I talk about the clinical trial, let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Ruemo Behire. I'm a medical oncologist and I practice in Indianapolis. I am also a clinical professor at Marion University School of Medicine, where I have my appointment. In addition to that, I am clinical director for American Oncology Research with a focus on diversity. Um, my background is really doing research in promoting representation in clinical trials. And as we talk about this wider trial, we'll talk about why this is important because we want studies to reflect the people that we see in our clinics. This adjuvant wider trial is an excellent trial, and I have participated in it, and I am one of the highest enrollers. So, why is this study being done? This study is basically trying to recapitulate a study that resulted in the approval of ribociclib or Kisqali in the treatment of patients with high risk breast cancer. The current way we think of high risk breast cancer is patients either because they have lymph node positive disease or because they have high risk genomic scores. Those patients are treated with sometimes with chemotherapy, but sometimes without. But hormone therapy is now being escalated. And the purpose of the wider trial was to show whether the drug Kisqali or ribociclib, which is an anti-estrogen that works inside of the cell, unlike the hormone therapies that either decrease estrogen production or block estrogen signaling on the outside, so that what you see in this trial is a combination of two estrogen agents. One either decreasing your estrogen production and therefore interfering with the outside phenomena of estrogen signaling, and the ribociclib, which blocks the estrogen pathway in the inside. And in the original trial, which was called the Natalie trial, there was about a 20 to 25% reduction in the risk of relapse in the patients who received ribociclib compared to patients who received placebo. However, that study had a number of weaknesses. Most important and most glaring was the fact that the patients were mostly Caucasian and therefore did not reflect all of the patients that we see in the United States. And as a result of that, Novartis has decided, in conjunction with the FDA, to do the wider trial, wider, so that we have a wider net of patients who are participating. Therefore, the purpose of the wider trial is really to show that the results that we're seeing in Natalie are not only applicable to the mostly white patients who participated in Natalie, but to all patients that we see in our clinic.
I love that. And I want to ask more questions about Natalie, but let's do a couple more introductions and then we're going to circle back to what was so important about this and what does a CDK4 inhibitor do? I think we're going to educate our audience a little bit on these things as well. Linda, you want to go next and then we'll wrap up with Jamil?
Sure. My name is Linda Ballone. I work at Queens Hospital Cancer Center. We're one of 12 hospitals in the public hospital system of people who, are of a very wide variety of ethnic backgrounds. So my job is to allow access to clinical trials to all populations, because I do believe, just like Dr. Bertha said, that these trials should be accessible to everyone. And I'm glad that we're able to participate in the wider trial. But even my goal is actually to get people to get these studies to be done in the first place with approval, with not less than 1% of minority patients, but really an equal amount of representation in the United States of that population, especially in a disease like breast cancer, where we know that Caucasian patients and Black patients are hit equally, but Black patients die at more frequency with this disease. So when you're doing a trial, any trial with breast cancer, you not only should have that representation in the US population, but you should have representation higher because it hits them harder. So I'm glad you're having this radio show, because I know there's some hesitancy to join clinical trials, but I think it raises awareness, to the population as to what exactly the problem is and why people should ask questions when they're approached in a trial. So that's really my job at Queens, is to help raise awareness, and I actually enroll patients in this clinical trial and speak to patients, and have been working for over 20 years in clinical trials in minority populations and Black populations. And I do a lot of community work with them, so that the first time they're hearing about a trial is not when they get breast cancer, but before it, so they know to ask about it.
Wow. No, thank you for that, Linda. That's incredible. And I'm going to circle back to you, ask about barriers, even for women who live in the city and who have
Yes.
proximity and all those things. So we're going to talk about that more. And you too, Dr. Beer. Jamil, you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on the doctors. And my name is Jamil Rivers. I'm living with metastatic breast cancer myself now for about 8 years. And I'm also the CEO and founder of the Chrysalis Initiative. And so our mission is specifically focused on making sure that we erase the disparities in cancer care and treatment and outcomes for Black women. And so for the past 7 years, of course, we're making sure that we support Black women and making sure that they at least receive quality standard of care. We find that those disparities in comparison to white women are eliminated if they at least get, just the standard guidance that we have in this country for oncology standards when it comes to breast cancer. And on top of that, we make sure that Black women are aware of the latest and greatest. And some of that innovation is also in particular related to clinical trials. But there are barriers, as you mentioned, when it comes to clinical trials. And we find that our work, in particular, the patient navigation and recruitment in those areas that traditionally the CROs and sponsors of these trials are not seeking out, that if Black women have the opportunity, they are willing to get involved, they are willing to adhere to the trial, they just need that support to navigate how to do that. And so we're very proud to be working with Novartis on the Adjuvant wider trial.
Thank you for that. Dr. B, can you go back and tell us, in really simple terms, about what a CDK4/6 inhibitor is? And let's start there for folks who might be watching who, they've heard about anti-estrogen or they heard about tamoxifen, but they don't know this CDK4. So how would you explain that in really simple terms?
All right. So to explain it, the first thing is to understand the biology of what we call hormone receptor positive breast cancer, or estrogen and progesterone receptor positive breast cancer. In these patients with estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, the tumor cells, the cancer cells, have a protein on their surface. That protein is called the estrogen receptor, but that protein sends signals from the surface of the cell into the nucleus of the cell, which is the middle of the cell. In doing so, that signal results in the cancer cells dividing over and over again. So one way to block those cancer cells is to either decrease the amount of estrogen that is produced or to use a medication that blocks the receptor so that estrogen is no longer able to stimulate the receptor outside of the cell surface. There are two mechanisms of doing that. One is tamoxifen, which is a commonly used drug. It's been around for over 50 years, maybe even 75 years. And tamoxifen is a drug that blocks the receptor so that estrogen can no longer bind to it. It is more effective in premenopausal women. In women who are now in menopause, it turns out that the best way to treat them is to give them a group of drugs that are called aromatase inhibitors to decrease the production of estrogen. But once you do that, all you're doing is affecting the protein on the surface of the cancer cell. But the cancer cells are really smart. So one way that they become resistant to the anti-estrogen is to increase signaling in the inside of the cell. So think of this as a phone line. Imagine that the receptor is the receiver at your end, and the nucleus is the receiver at the other end of the person that you're calling, going back to the old phones that we used to use. Not very similar though, because there's still a signal even with cell phones. But the signal is what is in between those two receivers. Unfortunately, what those cancer cells do is that they upregulate. In other words, they make the signal so much more powerful that even though there's no estrogen, that signal just independently starts to go to the nucleus and cause the cancer cells to divide. CDK4/6 inhibitors are medications that are designed to block that signaling. And they block that signaling independent of the fact that you're blocking estrogen, but sometimes they work with the estrogen antagonist. And CDK4/6 inhibitors like ribociclib or Kisqali, abemaciclib, or Verzenio, or Ibrance, or palbociclib are three drugs that are approved in the United States, and they all work at that level of blocking the CDK4/6, which is the mechanism by which the cells become resistant to anti-estrogen. I hope that's clear enough. Or do you think I should go further?
I'm going to ask the patients and the advocates to see, what do you think?
No,
Um,
actually, I'm sorry.
and I was gonna say, it sounds pretty clear. It sounds like it's just,
It's very
gonna pick
technical sometimes for
yeah, I know, I know.
patients to understand. So the way I try to do it when I'm with the patient, because I'm a little simpler as a nurse. Sometimes it takes the doctor and then the nurse, and that's why we have comprehensive care, because sometimes we go to each person. But of course, Dr. B is correct that the estrogen receptor hangs on to the protein. Not everyone has an estrogen receptor positive cancer. So you look at a protein on that cancer cell. And since we're women, a lot of women are getting estrogen. That estrogen hits that receptor, and it stimulates it to grow and circulate. And all women have estrogen in their body. It's what makes us women. So that's what when tamoxifen came, that blocks that receptor. That was a real boom in cancer care. However, like Dr. B said, we don't have anything that's working inside the cancer cell to stop that signaling. So what this drug does, a CDK4 inhibitor, is an estrogen. There's a lot of signals inside the cancer cell that promote that cancer cell to grow and divide and multiply. And what we want to do is we want to stop that. And that's what ribociclib does. It blocks the two enzymes in the cancer cell that are important for the cancer cell to grow and divide. And so it's like getting a 1-2 punch. You have a tamoxifen or an aromatase inhibitor that's blocking the estrogen part of it. So it's stopping that from going. But what's adding to it is working inside the cell and blocking that part that's inside the cell. So it's like giving that cancer cell a 1-2 punch against it, and helping stop the signaling from the outside, prevent it from starting to begin with, and helping it if something does break through on the inside, just stopping it on the inside of the cancer cell. And
Very, very well said, Linda. Very well said. Yeah, so and if just to add to that is think of the signal. It's actually a very unique signal. It's actually an anti-death signal.
Yes.
So CDK4 and 6 are proteins that essentially tell the cancer cells do not die. So when those proteins are available, the cancer cells get a signal that tells them keep growing and never die, which is abnormal for any cell. And so what these drugs do is that they go inside the cell and block that anti-death signal and therefore tell the cancer cells to die. And in combination with the anti-estrogen, the cells get this 1-2 punch, like Linda said, that kills them.
Got it.
Okay, we got to ask Jamel if that's we always
Well,
want to
actually,
as best
with
as possible.
yeah, I would say that with our patients, we typically describe cancer as a car, right? And the car needs to drive and go all over the map in your body, basically. And so we want to keep the car in its place. We want to keep it with flat tires, no gas in the car. And so if you think about the hormone-driven cancers, that's putting gas in the car. So the car is always trying to figure out a way to go. And so even if it gets a little bit of gas in there, right, the CDK4/6 inhibitor, is the key in the ignition. So meaning if they can't even get the key in the ignition or the metal to make the key to put it into the ignition, then you're good to go because the car is still not going to go, even if a little bit of gas gets in the car.
Mhm.
Well, I like that one, Jamel. I use
I
this
love that. I love that.
accelerator and engine, like
Right,
the estrogen is the accelerator, and then like the CDK4 shuts down the engine so that it
right,
can't even activate. You can't rev it.
right.
Right, right,
We're
right,
trying to block the car on all fronts,
right,
even if
right.
we got to
So
block the street.
I love it. So let's talk about the patients that we need for this trial.
Yeah,
And I think the really, really cool thing that Novartis is doing is what Jamil and I try to do every day is
yes,
get more Black women into trials
absolutely.
and get more Black women tested on drugs so we know they work on our bodies. And I think
Right,
this is an opportunity where Novartis said, we've done this trial, we've got good data, but we don't have good data on Black women. And
right,
so they came to Jamil and I, which is awesome, to say, help us. And so
right,
we feel really gratified and proud to be able to partner with them to actually go get Black women. So that's why we're
Yeah.
here. That's why we're talking on Black Doctor and in our social media to say, here's a great trial. And this is a trial that's not hard. It's easy.
right.
You need to be taking this drug anyway, right? If
Yes,
you have this kind of
absolutely.
breast cancer. So why not try this when it's kind of it's already sort of been proven and approved by the FDA. So
Right,
there is no sugar pill, there's no guinea pig. You're like
right.
just taking a
Exactly.
medication
Mhm.
in under a trial. And so it's
Mhm.
really easy to do. So help me with that. Jamel, you talk.
Well, no, what's also interesting about that data is that even with there being a limited number of participants in the trial, I know that the Chrysalis Initiative in Touch, we're seeing on the ground how Black women are responding to this treatment and to the drug. And so we want this documented. We want to understand, what do these outcomes mean? And then also, how do we make sure that their quality of life is not impacted and that we can improve adherence by making sure that we can support them to deal with whatever side effects come up. And we end up being the eyes and ears for these patients because a lot of times we have folks that either don't want to participate at all, or they just like, you know what, they throw their hands up, not knowing that there are solutions that can work for them, or they're keeping quiet because they're scared. They're like, nope, I want this additional layer of protection. I don't want to say anything. I'll just suffer through. And you don't have to do that. So I think, we're finding that this is a great opportunity to accelerate equity, which is the goal, and to make sure that more Black women and women of color can benefit from this, research. And we need to understand, okay, from this, what else can we learn about how, breast cancer behaves in the body bodies of Black women, based off of their stage, based off of the type of cancer that they have, which subtype, and then what are those outcomes. And the more data that we have, the more that we can be predictive in what is going to be the best treatment for these patients.
I have so many questions. So are you navigating folks to the trial or through the trial? And what happens if
Oh.
they don't
Oh,
live
yeah.
in-
So we didn't even get to the good part yet, Mo. We didn't even get to that part yet, Mo, I think. And that's the good part. That's the good part. So the patients that are coming to the trial and are getting navigation, free navigation from our team and Jamil's team. How cool is that?
Yes.
How cool
So,
is that?
so a lot of free things that the patients are actually getting, right? I hate to sort of bring the study down to the question of what is free and what is not.
Mhm.
But let's think about it. This is a drug that is FDA approved. Okay. And if a Black woman was to come to my office, or Hispanic woman, or an Asian woman, even though they were not well represented in the clinical trial, I would use the data from the Caucasian women and prescribe the drug, which means that that patient in front of me who is non-Caucasian, it's really going to be a clinical experiment of their own.
Mm.
That's really what it means.
It
Yeah.
does. Exactly. Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly. And
yes.
frankly, any drug we take as a Black woman, we are doing a clinical trial in our body.
Yes,
Yep.
but what makes it worse is that if you're not in a clinical trial, that data is not being collected.
Right.
Mhm.
So you're doing a clinical trial without the data not being collected. No one is systematically collecting the information as to how this drug will perform in these patients. That's number one.
Right.
So you get the advantage of the fact that you get this medicine, which generally will cost about almost $150,000 a year for free from the clinical trial for the benefit of collecting your information so that we will inform our choices in the future for other women. Think about that. Free medication, your data being collected, and then you get all these additional benefits,
Right.
navigation, additional support that the clinical trial provides. It is, almost a no-brainer. But you have to explain it in a way that people
Right.
understand it and people feel that they're not quote unquote guinea pigs.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
the whole anti-guinea pig drug
Right.
because it's already approved. Um, it's something that we would get,
Yeah.
we would 100% give to these patients because it's FDA approved. And that was a good thing. You know, the FDA didn't hold up the approval to allow this representation. But what they did do, aside from providing the medication to them for free, because a lot of people don't have great insurance and they might have to pay a copay, or we have to have some delays because we have to go through approval to get this medication if we didn't have this trial open. But they actually get it from me. They don't have to wait online in a pharmacy. They get it from the study site. We're actually even paying patients for their time and their travel to be in this study, which would not happen if they were
Right.
off trial. And so I think that that's, again, to get a drug that you would, again, 100% get. So, when we say clinical trial, we're always thinking about experiment, experiment, experiment.
Yeah.
And yes, it's an experiment, but say we throw the study out for that patient. Say the patient says no, guess what? The doctor is going to recommend this drug anyway.
Right.
So
Amen.
that's what makes this trial very different, because and they're recommending this trial because it is proven to work in a randomized clinical trial. So this is a very good trial. Plus, they're getting watched very closely. I know, there's plenty of studies to show that research patients are getting watched closely. Like I become their personal nurse. They have my personal phone number to call with any problems. And I have a patient now who actually, before being approached about the clinical trial, didn't want to do the CDK4/6 inhibitor because she was a woman that couldn't take off from work, didn't want her employers to know
Mm.
that she she had breast cancer and was battling breast cancer and thought that adding the CDK4/6 inhibitor was like adding chemo, which it's not. It's a targeted therapy. It's targeted towards the cancer cell. And she was afraid of the side effects, making her too weak to do her job.
Mhm.
And she was afraid of getting fired from her job. And I find that a lot with underserved communities, that this is a fear that they have, that sometimes their lifestyle becomes, more important in their mind than the cancer or than treating the cancer. And so these are the barriers. When you talk about barriers, one of the things that they're struggling with. And so, I did tell her, hey, you can quit anytime with any clinical trial. You could quit anytime. So there's no downside to trying it. And obviously, if they get a side effect in any center or any scenario, we're either adjusting the dose or we're stopping the medication. Doesn't matter if you're in a clinical trial. That's what we're doing because your safety is paramount important. And so this person got watched. She's actually not feeling any fatigue. She's not feeling any side effect, and she's shocked. And I said, well, that's why I say try it first, because you would have just not done it at all and
Right.
lost the benefit of
Right.
getting this drug that is proven to work.
So is this randomized, or is this is this is not a blinded randomized? This is
No,
No,
every patient gets the
okay,
drug.
observation,
Everybody
real
gets
world,
the drug. Yeah,
real
everybody
world.
gets the drug. Yeah, so
Okay,
it's real world. Everybody
gotcha.
gets the drug.
They
And
get it
then
in the same way that they would off trial,
yeah,
except we make it easier for them to get it. So
Okay.
right.
that they're represented. We make sure that they, I'm doing pill counts every time they come in to make sure they're taking it, and reminders and things like that. So, and I'm sure at Dr. B's center they're doing the same thing. And so they get extra monitoring to make sure there's compliance with it.
Yep.
So this
And
is
they
a
get us,
woman
and then they get us. Mo, the difference is
And
Yes.
they
they
get you guys,
get, they get
I
us.
think they get you as an extra support and
Yeah,
navigation. I
yeah,
So
mean,
very well supported. We explained to them that, clinical trials like the platinum package, it's
yeah.
your
best
cancer care.
care, best care.
Exactly.
So
And
what are
you get
some
the
of the
support of the
navigational
navigation.
issues that you've seen?
Yeah, I think just like I'm so happy, Linda, that you were able to convince that patient. But what also resonates with patients is that you have navigators who are trained on the trial aspects, but are also living with cancer themselves or on a CDK4/6 inhibitor themselves. So
Mhm.
it's something where real life, you don't have to speculate. This is what you could expect if, A, B, or C occurs. So I think that really resonates with them, and that's the reason why they feel so well supported since we're integrated into their cancer teams and with the trial.
Yeah, and our navigators, Mo, are all survivors.
Mm-hmm.
So, we can talk the talk, and because we've walked the walk, and
Right.
so we have a great team. Jamil has a great team, and we've kind of divided the sites. So
Mhm.
we both cover, the sites are all covered. Whatever site you go to, you're going to get care. And we're 24/7. We're there. You can call when your cancer center, when Dr. B and Nurse Linda go home to have dinner, we're here for you. And a
Yeah.
lot of the time our navigation, Jamel, is really talking to the husband, talking to the kids, talking
Faster
to the caregiver,
to
talking
the
to the
daughter.
pastor,
Yeah.
talking to everybody. So we're
Yeah.
here to do all those things, to give you the hug that you need. And we're not going to interfere with the medical conversations but we're going to help you. Like when you say I have the side effect or whatever, we're going to say, okay, well, here's how you ask the question when you call Linda tomorrow, or when you call Dr. B tomorrow. Here's the questions. Here's a good way to ask the question,
Mhm.
get your medical question answered. And in the meantime, we're going to give you a hug. We're going to read you a scripture. We're going to read you a poem. We're going to go for a virtual walk with you. We're going to, try to help you with your emotional stress, and really help you understand what you're up against, and just give you love. We say we put a hug around the science.
And I think that
But
this
we
is
also,
a good
yeah,
partnership to do, because sometimes they can come to a center and say, oh, they don't understand me. But when you have a partnership like your organization, that is not even just talking to the because I could talk all I want to the patients, but then they go
Right.
home and they have 500 people, including pastors I've
Right,
had.
the pastors
Yeah.
for sure, man. What's going on, right?
Yeah, they're always saying what's going on. Why do you want to do that?
Yeah,
Right.
And it's nice that, to have you guys who are talking from experience say, hey, I got this medication. And, it's not just me or Dr. B talking about it. It's you guys telling them, hey, I'm a survivor too, and this is what this medication's about, and reinforcing that, like, it's like Dr. B says it one day, I say it in another, you say it in another, and from a different perspective, because these poor patients have to become medical doctors in like 2 minutes.
They
they
get a
do.
PhD, right?
They do. They need a PhD.
Yeah, yeah,
And we just try to break it down in words they can spell, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And break it down, and it's so funny because Kisqali has great commercials. They're some of the best. We don't really like most of the commercials, but they're really good. And but now they recognize they don't know how to say the chemical name, right? But they
Yeah.
recognize the word
Mhm.
Kisqali, right? So
Right.
even just simple thing like that, and say, that commercial, so we can actually pull up and say, remember, see this commercial about
Yeah.
women or whatever. And so just to have that perspective, makes it easier. We're just trying to make it easier. We're trying
Yeah,
to get the science, but in a way that people understand it and embrace it.
Right.
And it's not frightening. We don't want science to be scary. We don't want clinical trials to be scary. And this is such a good one and an easy one to participate in. You need to be taking these drugs anyway. So, do it with our hug, right, Jamil?
and,
Right.
and
And I was just
a lot of our patients need this information. Like, it's not like we sit there and we say, okay, join this trial today. I mean,
right.
sometimes it takes me weeks to talk to patients, and it takes a number of people because of, all the mistrust that goes on, and sometimes we do have to take our time with having the patient come to the conclusion that that's what
Yeah,
they want to do, but we want them to make an informed, whether they people say, how are you so successful at getting patients to join clinical trials? And I say, I take my time, I make sure they understand it, and not just say, here, sign here, or pressure them to sign there.
yeah,
And I think having all these perspectives from the doctor, the nurse, the community leaders, we do a better job.
So let
And
me,
navigation has been
okay.
demonstrated to actually improve adherence and their experience and quality of life with the clinical trial. So we're definitely going to provide that, emotional support, and to be there for them for whatever additional capacity we can provide to the patient, and then also increase capacity with the cancer center, also the cancer center site. But patients that understand the mechanism of breast cancer and how it works and what they were diagnosed with and how the treatment works have better outcomes. And so the navigation also supports that too. And then also a lot of these cancer center sites can be overwhelming. It's
yeah,
not just the
yeah,
trial, it's not just that information, but who do I go to for what? How do I know who to go to? And so it really does, simplify to
Mm.
have that point person for us to really do all the legwork. We're the ones who understand
yeah,
how each site is formulated and what their patient workflow consist of, and can really help them, not just navigate their cancer treatment and the trial,
yeah.
but the center itself.
Right.
So
How
what
to
are
go
the
there.
solutions?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
So we actually also built a little website, a microsite. So if you want to get information, I'll pull it up here. Can you guys see this?
Mhm.
Hmm.
So this is on our Touch website. So literally you just go to the resources page and it takes you right here to this page. And it has the information about the trial, kind of who it's for. Can you guys see this? And then explaining the therapy as the way, but I mean, and they'll be on the therapy for 3 years. And basically, if you can click right here on this email address, clinicaltrials@touchbbca.org. That goes right to us, to our navigators, goes right to Jamil, to our navigation. And so we get your email, we figure out where you are, what site is closest to you, and then we call you. And we will call you and
My question, Ricky, so if a person's watching and they're on this drug, but they're not on the trial, can they still join or does it have to be prospective?
Um,
It has to be prospective, although if
Mhm.
you have been on a short course of therapy, you may be a candidate. I can't remember the number of weeks you
yeah,
would have been on the drug before.
Okay.
So you could still enroll if you were already receiving a CDK4/6 inhibitor, including ribociclib, if
Mhm.
it hasn't been more than a certain length of time. Now, there is
Okay.
only a small number of patients who are allowed to fall into that category. So I don't know where we are in terms of enrollment, but I think a patient who is interested should certainly reach out to their
yeah,
physician and find out whether they are a potential candidate.
yep.
Okay.
And you can easily email us and we can try to answer that question for you. So if you just go to, email us here, we can put you in touch with the people that can help you decide whether you qualify. So that's kind of the magic email, clinical trust. And I'll put that in the comments on Facebook.
Yeah.
But basically, we explain what a trial is here and how it works and how important it is for Black women to participate and kind of just the basics right here, right? And why we're doing this. We are not represented in this science, right? So,
Right.
this is really a good one to participate in. And this is the most common breast cancer. So, there's a lot of us out here, guys, um,
Right.
and
And it's very,
we also
it's,
know that our recurrence is high, so we don't want to recur. And this is a way to, work on that.
And if you're
Yeah.
only on the aromatase inhibitors on its own and you're not on a CDK4/6 inhibitor, just give a call because you, even if you're on it for a significant amount of time, you may be eligible to still receive this drug and be in this trial. So, listen, I always say, call, it doesn't hurt to ask a question
Doesn't
and
hurt.
see if you're eligible. And calling doesn't mean you're saying, I want to do it. Calling means saying you have a question. And so you're not committing by making that call to your organization. So, please just don't hesitate to call and get the answers you have and take control of your care. I agree with Jamel in terms of that. The more knowledgeable you are about your cancer, the better outcomes people will have. So,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just want to add a couple of comments as we speak and try to encourage Black women to enroll, since that is the majority of the audience that we're speaking to. But I want to make everyone aware that this is not a study only for Black women.
oh
This is
no,
a study
Yeah.
for all women, but we are emphasizing that we truly want to have representation of all the ethnicities. Black women, Hispanic women, Asian women, and white women. So no one is excluded. And one of the unique features of this study, and you do wonder why this wasn't done in the first place,
yeah,
is that Novartis is doing this at community oncology sites. And the reason why they are doing that is that they recognize that 80% of patients who have cancer, including breast cancer, are treated near their home, near their residence. They go to their community oncologists who are closer to where they live. And including those sites as major enrollers in this study has really helped in ensuring that this representation is being met. So far, it looks like we're meeting those goals.
yeah.
But there's more to it than that. It's more than just the site. It is having people who are passionate about including patients who are of certain groups that are not
yeah,
represented in clinical trials. There's a myth out there
Mhm.
that women that Black women or minority women are not, or men are not interested in clinical trials. The whole concept of Tuskegee, I think it's overblown. Yes, there are anxieties and questions that people raise because of those incidences that occurred in our country. But it is not true that Black people are not willing to participate in clinical trials.
Right.
In fact, there is a study that looked at pharmaceutical company studies and compared it with non pharmaceutical company studies which are funded by the government.
Mhm.
It turns out that if you look at the studies that are funded by the NCI and government agencies, there's a 9% representation of Black people. That is almost the 12% of the population of Black people in the United States. Whereas if you look at pharmaceutical company studies, it is about 1 to 2%. Why is there that disparity? There are a number of reasons. One is where those studies are placed. The second is the clinical trial investigators. So we wrote a paper and we just published our paper, which is called the Indianapolis Black Paper. And I would really encourage people to read it. And we call it the Indianapolis Black Paper, not because it's for Black people, but it's the opposite of a white paper. And that was deliberate and a cheeky name for the paper. In fact, there were editors that reviewed the initial paper and said they would not publish it because of the name. And so we said we're going to stick with the name. But the purpose of the Indianapolis Black Paper is to focus on how to enroll underrepresented populations in clinical trials. And as part of that, we had a consensus meeting of people and we created what we call the Drive Score. And the Drive Score is a way that we think clinical trials ought to be recognized. In other words, imagine that every study that is published, that you can look at a score and you will know immediately what the representation is on that study without having to dig into the paper. That's what the drive score is. So it's an informational tool that we think ought to be frontal, and every study should have it. So
Yeah.
that if I see a study and I say the drive score is low, then I know representation is low. And in this competitive marketplace, if there are two drugs that are in the same space and one has a higher drive score versus the other, as a clinician, I would choose the one with a higher drive score because it's more representative of our patients. That kind of economic force, that kind of economic pressure can change the behavior of pharmaceutical companies or clinical trialists so that clinical trials are more representative of the patients that we see. Now, is this just a social justice matter? The answer is no. This is a biologic question. There are differences that occur biologically because of ancestry. Race is a social construct. If I say today I am white, you cannot say I'm not. In other words, I can define my own race by myself. That is what a social construct is. But my biology is my biology. And there are ancestral implications to the fact that I'm of Nigerian descent, which means that I have certain proteins that may not be present in my blood or in my body, or may be overrepresented in my body that may have significance in terms of their interactions with medications that I take. So those medications may be less effective, more effective, maybe the dosing ought to be different, and I may have side effects that are unknown. These are the reasons why clinical trials should look like the patient for whom the drug is approved.
Yes.
The lack of doing that is a problem, and that is really what we're trying to address here.
Thank you, Dr. Behere. I think you're absolutely right on a couple
Love it.
things. And one key take home is that, the outcome of Tuskegee was increased safety for trials, right? It was
Yes.
measures that would make trials safer for us. So when people are, watching and saying, oh, but Tuskegee, yeah, but the outcome of that, right, were the safety measures that we now employ. And
Amen.
secondarily, when you talk about, the trial numbers and the enrollment, there's a reason why those numbers are low. And you really hit the head on the nail. And one of the things I hope to see out of this, because right now what I'm hearing is that people who might be interested will call and they can get navigated to certain sites. But as we look at how to expand trials to where people live and really think about decentralizing trials, that's a theme that you're going to hear more and more of, because we need to make sure that we can reach these folks wherever they might be. And that score, let me tell you something, that's economic. That's health outcomes. It's
All the
equity on
things.
another level, and it's so very necessary and very timely, because we need to be able to quantify these things, not for their social and moral value, but for the scientific value that it holds. And to be able to put a number to it is impressive work. It's outstanding.
Yep.
Thank
Mo,
you.
also, I love what you said, Dr. B. It's awesome, especially how you describe what our underrepresentation. But Mo, when Jamil and I first started talking to Novartis, oh my gosh, Jamil, when was that? Like 2 years ago we started, right? But what they started with is Ricky and Jamil, where should we go? What
Yes.
sites do you guys recommend? That was one of our first conversations, right? So
Yeah.
we both were able to give input into that list of sites where we are, which is really awesome on their part to even ask us, where we
Yeah.
know we can find our people, where we had some relationships. And so I think they've been very,
Deliberate.
they've been listening. They've been listening to us and embracing how to do this trial from the beginning of that we were involved. And so, Liz Hinterman, we've been talking to Liz for a couple years. And so they have really wanted to hear us, wanted to get our perspective in this design and how we should do this. So we're really grateful for that. But we do think that, clearly we need to, I always say, where Black women live, work, play, pray, and slay. And so, we in many of the areas where the site is, we do have blesties on board. We have our belong people on board. We know people in the neighborhood. And so we're going to bring all that to the party in this care. So
Absolutely. And just want to also clarify that, not just Black women are eligible for the study.
oh yes, everybody.
And non-Black women who are participating in the trial also receive the benefits of the wraparound services and patient navigation as well.
Yes,
Wow.
everybody. And we started with a smaller group, and then Navarre came back and said, wait a minute, everybody should get this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where we are. And there, it's great. It's a great place to be. And we are ready. The phones are ready. The email's ready. Email us at clinicaltrials@touchbbca.org. And we've got two of the great leaders of this trial right here talking about, it's going to be great. And we're, let's go.
Awesome.
But Ricky,
sites opening up?
oh, sorry.
Okay.
No, please.
No, I was going to say to Ricky and to Janelle that this should not be the case in future trials. In other words, this is a reactive trial, okay?
Yes.
So this time we can say we'll forgive them for doing so, right? In the future, what Novartis and any other company ought to be doing is to incorporate these elements into the trial at the beginning,
Yes.
so that there isn't this gap where the drug is approved and then we have to do another trial and wait another 5 years to figure out what happens in underrepresented populations. So I hope that you guys are telling them
Yeah, we are.
that
Trust
this
me, we will
not
go down
no, this
fighting with
really should
that
not be,
message.
yes, it should not be a one-time deal, or look at how great we are this time. No,
Yeah.
it should be for the future.
Yeah.
Yes. And
You can say it to the
Jamil and I,
FDA too.
yeah, Jamil and I fight this fight every day, right? Jamil? And we will go down fighting with this message to all of pharma to do
Yeah.
this work. And
Yeah.
so
And
that's
the FDA. We've been talking to the NCI and the FDA as
Excellent.
well.
yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, but this is our God job. This is our God job. So
Yeah.
we're doing this work I love your message. I'm going to take what you just said and put it in a video that we can show.
Yeah, show them.
Our
They
meeting.
know how I feel about this, because this is
Right.
that's the way it ought to be.
Yes,
Yeah, I
Mhm.
agree.
we agree.
I'm sure-
We wholeheartedly agree. We
I'm
wholeheartedly
sure
agree.
Dr. B is like me. I've been fighting this for years. I mean,
Mhm.
and when you look at trial after trial, like he happened to make an algorithm, which I think is terrific. But I actually do look individually at trials of major drugs that have gotten approved for,
Mhm.
a lot of breast cancers over the years and other cancers.
Yes.
We know that the Black community in particular is hit harder by all cancers.
Mhm.
And we haven't acknowledged that representation. And it's nice, again, that they are going back and they're doing it. But in the meantime, while we're getting this data, everyone is getting this medication, and we really don't know how it works, in the Black community, for example. But that's wrong. That's the wrong way to do it. We should do it right the first time.
Do it right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we published at San Antonio, this past San Antonio meeting. We took all the breast cancer drug approvals over the past 10 years,
Mhm.
and then we scored them for this drive score. And less than 10% of the studies had a drive score that we consider meaningful in terms of representation. So it means that for the past 10 years, and you could look up, go if you go to San Antonio and search under Bihere as the author, you'll see the paper. This paper, but the first author was my daughter. But what we found is studies in breast cancer that have resulted in drug approvals over the past 10 years. They don't reflect the patients in the United States. That is atrocious. That is a travesty. That ought not to happen. And hopefully, we don't do this again in 20 years and say, well, it's still the same problem.
And it doesn't even come close. I'm sure your study showed it
Yeah,
doesn't come close to represent.
no.
Wow. Wow, and I want to thank you all for joining today and talking about this because we have to be the change. And it gives us a chance to really highlight the opportunity, right? Like this is an opportunity for something that is, you're not going to be a guinea pig. It's a drug that is already approved. It's a system that is designed for you to succeed and not to fail, right? It is set up for you to succeed. So if you're watching, if you know somebody who's going through breast cancer, and maybe next time we'll talk a little more about what does high risk mean, right? When you talk about early stage breast cancer and how do we determine high risk? Because there's inequities there too, but really, if you know somebody who is going through cancer treatment and they're meeting with their oncologist coming up, there's questions you can ask. There's resources. There's a trial that is designed for you to succeed and that is standard of care all the way. So we've removed the barriers, right? We have removed so many of the barriers.
All the barriers. There's no barriers here. It's an easy one to do. And, we're excited to do this work.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for joining
us. Put the website in the chat for sure, right?
Yeah, and put the website and the email address, clinicaltrials@touchbbca.org, and the website link we'll put in the comments. And we're so happy to have you guys in our family now. Mo and I never let people go. You're stuck with us
We never do. It only gets bigger.
I know. You're in our family now.
No, this is a passion for me, and this is a legacy thing for me, and this is an important part of my life.
Great.
I mean, think about it. People died for us to be able to even have a conversation like this today.
Right.
So if this makes people uncomfortable, too bad. I've made people uncomfortable. I've been kicked out of board meetings because of that, but that's okay. I will continue to do the work.
Been there, done that. Got the T-shirt.
Jamil, how can people follow you and follow Chrysalis as well?
Oh, well, actually, if you go to the same website, we're there as well.
Yes,
as far as our link, and even, of course, us finding which site is closest to you, those are already pre-assigned. But the navigation is provided by both the Chrysalis Initiative and Touch. So you'll be just go to that website.
Go to the website, email us, and we're here.
Beautiful. Linda, people are watching in New York. How can they reach you?
Sure. I'm at Queens Hospital Cancer Center, one of the public hospital systems, and they could actually call me on my direct line because I don't want to miss any person. It's my line. They're not going to get set into the whole hospital rigmarole. So my number is 718-883-3751. They'll get me directly. My email is my last name, Bulone, L, and my first initial at nychhc.org. And I will talk to them about every aspect of the trial that they have questions with for as long as they want to talk.
Right. And we'll put all that in the comments. Thanks.
Dr. Bihere, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Listen, I'm looking forward to learning more about the score and really applying this to so many things. So we should talk about a bigger collaboration for Touch and Dr. Bihere also.
Oh, yeah. We'll call you.
For Chrysalis.
Look at the Indianapolis black paper.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right, you guys.
Bye, everybody.
You guys have a blessed love. See if we can make some heart count.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Love. Take care. There they go.
There they
go. Bye. Love you, Mo. Love you, Jamil. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.